Welcome to Dear 21-Year-Old Me, where we ask our guest what they'll say to their 21-year-old self and go back in time and discover how they celebrated their 21st birthday. He's your host, Jeremy Irvine.
Hello and thanks for joining us. Today on the program we catch up with Hacia Atherton. Now, Hacia has a fascinating story, one that is really underpinned by her courage. And as we'll hear, it's been an extraordinary set of circumstances that has led her to where she is and where she wants to go. Literally about putting one foot in front of each other and having to relearn many things that many of us take for granted each and every day. But before we meet Hacia, let's go back to the year 2009 to find out what was happening when she was turning 21. In Australia, we were listening to Michael Jackson, Pink, Black Eyed Peas, and Susan Boyle literally dreamed her dream as her debut album became the UK's best-selling debut album of all time. It also debuted at number 1 on Australia's ARIA's Top 50 in December 2009 for 4 weeks and continued into 2010. Overseas, Chelsea win the FA Cup for the 5th time after beating Everton, and England defeat Australia 2-1 in the Ashes. In the US, the Pittsburgh Steelers win their 6th Super Bowl, defeating the Arizona Cardinals 27-23, with the Steelers becoming the first NFL team to win 6 Super Bowl titles. Hugh Jackman hosts the Academy Awards, with Slumdog Millionaire winning 8 awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. The late Heath Ledger becomes the second performer to win a posthumous acting Oscar, winning Best Supporting Actor for his role as the Joker in The Dark Knight. In US politics, Barack Obama is sworn in as the 44th President of the United States and its first African-American president. And I was there that cold inauguration January day in DC, in National Mall, having gone to the States to see history made. I was surrounded by joy, embraced in a fervour of hope with millions of people in DC for that amazing, spine-tingling and humbling experience to see history made. Here in Australia, Gary Ablett Jr. wins the AFL Brownlow medal, and Ablett and his Geelong teammates go on to defeat St Kilda later in the week in the grand final. In the NRL, the Melbourne Storm defeat the Parramatta Eels, although the Storm would later be stripped of the award due to salary cap breaches. 2009 was the beginning of digital TV in Australia with new channels launched. It was also the first year of MasterChef, with Julie Goodwin winning the show, 3 million people tuning in to see her take out the award. Tony Abbott replaces Malcolm Turnbull as federal opposition leader, and Christina Keneally, now a federal Labor senator, becomes New South Wales' first female premier. And bushfires in Victoria kill 173 people in what are not only the nation's worst ever bushfires, sadly surpassing the record set by Ash Wednesday in 1983, but Australia's worst peacetime disaster since 1899. And it's when our guest, Hacia Atherton, turned 21. It is the year 2009. Welcome, Hacia.
Thank you. So great to be here.
So you heard the introduction when we stepped back into 2009, which was the year that you did turn 21. What do you remember about that year, and what were some of the things that you were doing at that time in your life?
It was a very interesting year. So full disclosure, I was a bit of a wild child back then and spent a lot of time out in the clubs and cocktail bars, living it up. But also it was the year that Bitcoin came out and started to launch. And as well as I was a wild child, I'm a bit of a nerd and a numbers girl. So I was so excited about Bitcoin. But what was interesting about being in those two environments of understanding Bitcoin and being really excited about it and being in that wild kind of clubbing environment, I learned some very useful skills very quickly. I wanted to talk about Bitcoin, but who wants to sit in a nightclub talking about cryptocurrency? No one, really.
Except for you.
Except for me. So I very quickly learned.
You were ahead of your time at 21.
Yeah, 21, having a good time, drinking your tequila sunrises. Hey, let's talk about cryptocurrency. Mood killer. So I very quickly, and a lot of people didn't understand what it was. So I very quickly learned about the skill of taking what was a complex concept and simplifying it. So instead of talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I was talking about, do you know there is money out there now that is completely virtual? There's no coins, there's no dollars, it doesn't go in and out of a bank, it's completely on your computer. And all of a sudden there was curiosity. People were like, whoa, that's cool. What's that about? And there's a conversation. And then again, bringing in humor. So did you know someone ordered a pizza and it was like $25 pizza, and then sometimes that $25 is worth millions of dollars, sometimes it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and up and down and there it goes and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden I learned by bringing simplicity to a complex concept and humor, you can engage pretty much anyone into that conversation. And so I could club hop and bar hop and cocktail hop and keep talking about cryptocurrency and have people ask questions as long as I kept it simple and funny. So that was a very interesting experience and a skill that you need to use even today. I still use that skill.
So some of those foundational skills, communication skills, given that what you do these days, and we can talk about that in a minute, is really based on your interaction with people. It's a one-on-one relationships. I mean, that's what you do and that's who you are. I'm interested to get into your mind when you were 21 and what you were thinking about the world at 21.
Yeah. So again, coming into those skills that I still use today, the motivation was different. So when I was 21, I was thinking about how can I skip clubbing lines and not stand in a line for 45 minutes in the freezing cold to get into a club. So then I started developing the skill of making people feel seen. So I developed the relationships with the bouncers at all my favorite clubs, but by making them feel seen, asking them about their girlfriend or their sick mum or how their week was or how their workout was this morning or how that training for that boxing fight was, and remembering little details. And by making someone seen, that bouncer position who usually just feels like a cog in the wheel and the person that's there and that no one sees them in their daily life, by giving them that 30 seconds or a minute of time on center stage in my life, being a young, pretty 21-year-old girl, it was so powerful. And they would let me in. They'd give me drink cards. Like if any guy in the bar they could see was harassing me, they would pull them out by the scruff of the collar, because I'd spent that 1 or 2 or 3 minutes every night that I went there to build that relationship with them and network with it.
So how does that translate into a self-understanding? Because was that, I mean, let's be honest, was that about, hey, drink card? Because you don't, and you and I have known each other for a while now, you don't come across these days as someone who's in it for yourself, really.
No. And later I'm sure we'll touch on my accident and a big change that happened there. But definitely back then at 21, as a lot of 21-year-olds were, there was a lot more self-interest in, hey, drink cards, jump the line. And that was probably my motivating factor. Like I was a selfish little 21-year-old.
Yep.
But what also overlaid that is I've always had a natural curiosity in my mind. So as much as the motivation to start those conversations was selfish, the reasons I continued those conversations was I was truly actually interested in their lives and what was happening, and really enjoyed that connection. They all came from a very different world to me. I grew up in Kew and went to Ryton and private girls' school and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of these bouncers didn't grow up in those environments. So I was very curious about their lives and how it was so different to mine.
Let's talk about your 21st birthday yourself. The party?
Yeah, the party.
Let's talk about the party. So set the scene.
So I had a two-part with my two families, my real family and my clubbing family. So
right, let's talk about both. G-rated for both.
Yeah. So the real family was just down at Portsea, and my stepmom created this she got this gorgeous cake. And funny story, her dog actually ate the first cake, and she was like having this massive panic attack and called up the cake shop, and they're like, you have to make another one like within hours because the dog's eaten this birthday cake. So the first one was apparently a lot more elaborate and the second one was more simplistic because they didn't have the time to turn it around.
How did the dog go with the sugar rush?
Yeah, the dog wasn't very well. I think the dog wasn't a huge part of the 21st, I have to say. It was a bit of an MIA guest.
Right. I wonder why. Coming off a lot of sugar. So down at the beach?
Yeah, down at the beach. We had an iPhone connected to a speaker and just a lovely time with family, beautiful dinners and all that kind of stuff. Then we got into dancing on the tennis court doing the Nutbush city limit.
That's very cool.
So that was lovely and fantastic just to have that time with my family. And I consciously did that because I really wanted to spend that time and connect with my family and not have the distraction of the friends and really, spend that time with my dad and my brother and everything. So that was beautiful. And then the weekend after, that was on my actual birthday. And then the weekend after was the more wilder version of my 21, right. which ended up we actually got kicked out of the nightclub. So
being the shy thing that you were at 21.
Yes, being the shy thing I was. I pushed the relationship boundaries and was dancing too much on said bar top table thing and wasn't really appreciated by the owner. I think my high heels might have knocked a few patrons' glasses off the bar table and that probably ended in a couple of complaints, which ended in me and my best friend getting kicked out of the club.
Right. Can we just step back to your family birthday? Were there speeches? Did you get up and have a bit of a reflection on where life might be going? And do you still keep in touch with some of your friends from those days, from a family environment?
Yeah, well, yes, because they're all family, so I have to keep in touch with them. Sometimes, unfortunately, no jokes. Love my family. Yes, no, there was some speeches that I think my dad's one was pretty stock standard, proud dad moment. The most surprising one was my brother, actually, because he's my half brother. We've got different mothers, so we weren't overly close growing up, and there's a big age difference between us as well. And I think that speech really, really surprised me. Again, linking back to what I said about being seen, is that was the first time I really realized my brother actually saw me as his little sister, and as the actual little sister, not a half little sister or not something like that. So that was probably the foundation of developing our adult relationship and really for me seeing the dropping of the veil of split family dynamics and going, hey, he's my brother. He's not my half brother. He's my brother.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. Do you remember your speech?
My speech was pretty quick. It was just like a really thank you, really appreciate you guys being here kind of thing. It wasn't a massive thing.
This podcast is proudly edited by Darcy at Pro Podcast Production. If you need help with your podcast, visit propodcast.com.au.
At 21, what did life look like? What was the grand plan? Was there a grand plan? Was there a vision for you, or was it let's just live every day, which is completely cool?
It was extremely unclear. So I was going through a bit of a rebellious phase. Surprise, surprise. I have very much challenged the status quo personality, which I haven't got rid of at all. But No. At that time, I was directing my rebellious challenge the status quo personality more towards not being part of the family business and trying to forge my own path and all that kind of stuff. But I was very lost and didn't have much clarity. And the driving force in my life at that time was my horses. So kind of at that 21 stage of life, I thought, you know what, I'll just give in. I'll go follow it. I'll outsource my career pretty much. I'll just do, Dad wants me to work in the family company, follow the path to an accountant, whatever. It all sounds like a great idea. I just need money to pay for my riding and my lessons and my horses and everything like that. So I kind of at that time flicked my priorities to my horses and my riding and outsourced career direction to my father, who's had an incredible career. So I thought that was a very good outsource option.
But something happened, didn't it?
Yes, something did happen.
Should we have a chat about that? Are you up for that?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Right. So tell us about the almost, dare I say it, the sliding door moment, because it to me, having got to know you, it really is quite a fundamental part of who you are.
Very much so. So in 2017, I was doing very, very well in achieving my goals in dressage. My more experienced horse and I were riding at an international level, and we were starting to train Grand Prix moves, which is the highest level of dressage, the one that you see at the Olympics. And my younger horse was doing fantastic, and we were actually training to qualify her to go to the World Equestrian Games, because my driving goal was to ride for Australia. My dad sailed for Australia and he's got an Australian jacket. And since I was a little girl, I always wanted my own Australian jacket. So we're working towards that. It was a very, very cold winter's evening. And unfortunately, my young horse decided she didn't want to train anymore. And she reared up vertically and I came off her back and her whole 600 kilos came crashing down on top of me. And it's amazing what adrenaline does. So I somehow managed, I was sitting up, like my legs were straight out and I was sitting up and she'd fallen in my lap and I managed to somehow push her off into the right side of me so that she didn't come and crush my full body. And then I managed to flip over onto my tummy and army crawl out of the way because I knew if I stayed there when she stood up, she would have trampled me as well. So it was like that superhuman strength moment and I couldn't move either of my legs. So I literally dragged my like dead, lifeless legs a couple of meters away. And when I knew I was at that safe distance, I just like collapsed into the sand. And this overwhelming feeling of pain, which was just took your breath away, just flooded my body. And in that moment, I'm like, I've broken my spine. I can't feel or move either of my legs. I've just got this incredible pain flooding through my body. I've broken my spine. So the ambulance people came and they're just such incredible people. I remember they're trying to stabilize me. I'm in the freezing cold arena sand, so they were struggling to get the veins for the painkillers. And the woman's like talking about this really bad date that she had. So she's obviously highly stressed and trying to stabilize me, sees how serious this accident is. And she's like, oh, you would not believe what this guy did on my date. You know? And I just thought...
That's like one of those bad dates Facebook groups. So this is when you're on the ground, writhing in agony.
Yes. But she did make me laugh. So I'm like in the most amount of pain I've ever been in my whole entire life laughing about her bad date. So she was very, very good at her job.
So she's taken your mind off the waves of pain that are going through you. You would have been terrified. Talk about like fear was just coming through me. Then they got all the drugs in me and 9-eye sleepy time, woke up while they're transferring me into the helicopter. Remember the helicopter guy just saying, squeeze my hand when you wake up. So woke up, squeezed hand, sleepy. Remember the doors of the helicopter opening when I was at Alfred Hospital and just seeing the team of medical people there. And that's when I realised I'm like, I'm in trouble. Yeah. Well, the Alfred's one of the major, the trauma centre for Melbourne or Victoria, isn't it? So it's you were very, very seriously injured.
Yes. So when I saw that wall of medical professionals and the looks on their face, like the AMBO people were great at making me feel like, maybe this is not that bad. But when the door of the helicopter opened and I saw the medical team there and their faces, I'm like, maybe this is that bad. So then they assessed me and everything and told me the terrible news that I'd pretty much shattered my pelvic bone. I'd broken, I had numerous fractures, like, 20, 30 fractures in both hips, ball and socket, and suspected severe nerve damage to the right leg. So luckily I hadn't broken my spine, a few fractures in the coccyx, but not a spine break, which was fantastic news, but also very, very bad news on the other stuff. 2 days before they could operate on me because of the swelling and the bleeding and everything. So for 2 days I had to lie in hospital being rolled every 2 hours with that shattered, crushed pelvis and the sound of the bones like against each other. It was just horrific. So then had my 9-hour surgery two days later, and awoke from that to the medical team saying, look, we don't think you'll be able to ever walk again in any meaningful way. So you've got at least 6 months in rehab. You'll have to learn how to stand again, 3 months non-weight bearing. So 3 months just literally in a wheelchair in a hospital bed. And then from there, learn how to stand again, see how you go with walking, but prepare yourself to be on crutches, walking frames, wheelchairs, like you're going to need aids.
So how do you cope with that news? You're lying in bed, I guess drugged up to your eyeballs with painkillers, hopefully.
Yeah.
And they walk in, the family's around you?
No, this was told to me when I was in recovery, so I was by myself.
Wow. Okay. So you're all alone, being told your life has completely changed in literally the instant of the horse falling on you, and you do you recall what you were thinking when they walked away, or there's not enough scotch in Melbourne? And I'm not advocating drinking, by the way.
You're going to laugh, and this is where the nerdy side of me really kicked in. Just before the accident, because I went back to uni as a mature age student to study accounting, and just before the accident, I'd finished my last subjects, and I was on the fence whether I enrolled and studied the CPA or what I did. So in that moment, I actually decided, oh, well, if there's so much uncertainty around my body, there's no uncertainty around my mind. Let's enroll in the CPA program and do that.
Because that's how all CPAs begin their careers. So you're in the Alfred Hospital, reaching for the calculator. Most people would have been reaching for something different. It literally was that type of, okay, almost like a moment of clarity. And I know you're being very humorous about this, but it would have been absolutely terrifying.
It was terrifying, and I think that's why I went there, because I felt like a ship that had lost its mast, had lost its sails, was in a sea of a massive storm with massive waves and everything. And I'm like, I need stability. I need a guiding North Star. I need something that's not going to be affected by the ups and downs of what I'm about to go through, something that has structure, has stability, something that I can hold on to, a lifeline. And what better thing than a structured academic program to do that.
And yet it seems, until the accident, your words, not mine, the party girl in a eastern suburbs, and I'm not having to go any of that, life changed for you literally in that instant. Is that a fair observation? I mean, clearly it did, but it changed you as a person.
It did, and the metaphor I use, so it didn't just shatter my pelvis, it shattered my world, it shattered my direction, it untethered me from my horses, what was my driving force and everything. So I had all these pieces of my body, of my emotions, of my mind, of everything in this little shattered glass in front of me. So I was like, right, you're going to have to rebuild this and create a disco ball, like create something beautiful out of all these shattered pieces that can oversee your life, and all these pieces will go back together and you'll create something better and stronger and different. But it was that process of picking up all the pieces and constructing my new disco ball.
And one of those formative experiences, you having a chat to me before we did the interview, was when you were in rehab and you met a lady.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? Because I really related to that conversation, and I think having got to know you over the last wee while, it really has summed up a lot about where you come from. So let's just deep dive into that, because that seemed to me to be a really important conversation in your life totally.
Very important. So before this accident, as I said before, I was really focused internally on my goals, me, everything about what I wanted to achieve in my life, and never really thought about what that journey did to other people. And so we were in rehab. We're at the end of the walking bars, myself and this beautiful old woman, probably early 90s, and she'd had a hip replacement. And this was in the early stages when I was learning to stand again, and I could only stand for a few seconds, up to a minute if the physios were holding me, and the pain, and I would cry and scream and everything like that. So this lady was at the same rehab time slot with me, so she'd seen that journey and experienced it as well. And I turned to her and she was just defeated. She's like, I cannot stand today, and what's the point? I'm at the end of my life. I've only got a few years left. I'll just give up and stay in my wheelchair. And I kind of thought, no, like, you've got a few years left. You've got great-great-grandchildren. You've got so much still to do in this life and give and go to the park with them. So I turned to her and I said, look, I get you. I want to give up today. I want to crawl back to my hospital bed, feel sorry for myself, cry myself to sleep, and just give up on life and the world. But can you do something for me? If I stand up today, will you stand up? And she's like, well, if you're going to stand up, of course I've got to stand up. I said, all right. So 1, 2, 3. On 3, we'll stand up together. And what that process clicked in me is I'm like, oh my God, like the way to motivate yourself through your own hardship and own pain is not focusing on you. It's focusing on what your journey and your strength and your power does for other people. And on that day, I didn't stand up for me. I honestly stood up for her, and I'd never felt so empowered in my life.
What happened to the lady?
Oh, she got out. She walked out of rehab and off she's gone, and she's got her grandkids and she plays with them in the park, and like, she loves it.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you go through, and I don't want to belabor the point, but how do you go through that process of having to literally learn how to walk again?
Yeah. So for me, because of my nerve damage as well, we had to get creative, which is fun because I love curiosity and innovation and being creative. So it was actually a fun element to learn how to do different things. For example, we used a lot of mirror therapy. So it's very interesting with the brain. You put a mirror in between your legs. You're like on the hospital bed with a mirror in between your legs, and you've got your left leg that works fine, and you do walking movements, lift it, bend the knee, bend the ankle, and the brain sees the reflection, which it thinks is your right leg. And so it moves your right leg with your left leg in the mirror. So that's how you, get the strength. And we combined that with audio. So my physio would be like, bend your ankles, flex your toes, bend your ankles, flex your toes. So the brain's hearing the words, it's seeing the right leg in the mirror, and it's moving the right leg, and it's reinforcing those pathways in your brain and teaching yourself how to walk again. Then you transfer that over into the rehab pool, where they would say the same things, but they'd physically move my leg and physically do the movements for me. And then finally, when we transferred that onto land, again with mirrors at the end, the audio, the physical help and movement, all those different patterns all built up the strength to be able to teach myself to walk again.
Were there days where you just thought, not doing this?
Oh, yeah. There was days that the physios literally had to drag me out of bed, literally. But I would go back into those moments of thinking about, like, the look on my mum's face the first time I stood up, and the pain of her seeing me go through that. And when my dad would come visit me in hospital, he'd bring my little dog, so I get to see her a couple of times a week.
That's cool.
Just the heartbreak and despair in their face, seeing their once active, lively, athletic daughter trapped in a wheelchair. At the time, I had nerve issues with my bladder, so I had no control over my bladder. So I'm there, 29, 30-year-old in adult diapers in a wheelchair. Wow. And the heartbreak on their faces. So again, back in those moments when I couldn't do it for myself, I would think about my friends, my family, the people around me. I'm like, hey, so you just got to get up for them today. You've just got to do these exercises for them today, you know?
Yeah. Wow. That's, and how do you translate that into post-recovery, into looking at a worldview now for you? Because you're doing all these different things, which we'll put in the show notes and all the links and multitude of links. But would you go through that all again?
100%. I would go through it all again, because
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I'd do Groundhog Day, because the most incredible thing that taught me is discovering what I call is my courageous purpose. So going through all of those different experiences, realizing that power of never giving up, not for yourself, but for the people around you, made me just discover that, like, the passion that fuels my purpose in life is inspiring other people to see their remarkable potential and helping them guide back to that inner courage that allows them to overcome those challenges that they face so they can achieve their dreams.
You said to me in the past two things. One is rock up with your pink stationery, you do you. So that's the first quote I want to throw at you. And the second one, which I'm still trying to work out what it means, and perhaps you can help me out, is you said, quote, you can't build an empire on the back of a Post-it note. It has to be on the front. So let's deep dive down into the first one. What does that mean? You can't build an empire on the back of a Post-it note. It has to be on the front. What are your truisms? What does it mean?
So,
or was you just throwing words at me to go, geez, that sounds really interesting. I must ask that question.
That sounds fantastic and very, elusive and entrepreneurial. We'll just throw that out there. No.
Back to the CPA magazine quotes.
Yes. No, there's a lot of thought and meaning behind that. So for a lot of people, they try and build things in the back end before they show the world what they're doing. So on the back of the Post-it note, with themselves, with a big wall in front of it, disconnecting themselves from other people and collaboration until they think they have something that people can believe in, or there's social proof, or I have enough courage or runs on the board to convince someone that this is a good idea. For me, especially going through rehab, I understand the power of community, of support, of collaboration, of throwing those stupid ideas out there and that actually sparking something in someone else's mind going, hey, what about this? What about that? So building an empire on the front of the Post-it is actually about having those conversations before you're ready, having those conversations before concept is proof with people from all different areas, and not having that fear that people are going to steal your idea, because if they do, they're not going to do it the same way as you anyway, or that people are going to think you're stupid, or it takes away from your credibility. It's really embracing, hey, this is first draft. This is just an idea that's in my mind. Can I bounce it off you? And developing that empire on the front of the Post-it, not the back.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Pink stationery.
Yes. So this leads into really embracing your authentic self. So for a while there, I lost myself, and when I was coming into the corporate world, I definitely chameleoned. So being a female in manufacturing, I tried to fit into the boys' club, wear the blacks, wear the greys, kind of follow suit. And that's not me. I'm a pink girl. I'm out there. I'm quirky. I'm different. I love to wear my Snoopy t-shirt under a really nice Hugo Boss suit. Like, that's just me.
You heard it here first, folks.
Snoopy and Hugo Boss, fashionista right here. So for ages, I lost that. And what I really started to understand is, by being a chameleon, you're actually building distrust in your relationships, because people feel that you're hiding something, or when they see you on the weekend when you're more in your true self, they're like, "What? Yeah. I didn't know that." They're shocked, and shocks in relationships chip away at trust. So once I started showing up in my pink suits, with my Snoopy t-shirts, with my pink stationery, and quirky glasses, and just being myself, I started to really build fantastic relationships that were based on trust and connection. And would last the test of time. You could have those conversations with those people that were difficult, that were a bit confronting at work, and it didn't degrade away at the relationship because they trusted you and they respected you and they felt like you weren't hiding anything. So there was no fear in the relationship.
Talking about fear, do you still get scared?
Oh, hell yeah. I think fear is, I actually love fear. I love the concept of fear and talking about it because fear is a natural human instinct. So we have it to protect ourselves, to make sure that we're not doing something that endangers our lives, that endangers someone else. But fear unchecked can actually stop you from progressing or stepping outside of your comfort zone. So it's good to have a very healthy relationship with fear, to check in, okay, is this fear protecting my life and keeping me safe? Like, I'm scared of jumping out an airplane. I do not want to die. I do not want to jump out of an airplane. That fear is a valid fear, and I respect that fear. The fear of walking into a manufacturing round table and speaking about my thoughts of the importance of bringing more women into trades, that scares the hell out of me, facing a wall of men in their beautiful grey, black and navy blue suits. But that fear
as I
needs...
put the blue suit away. No. But it strikes me that's not... I don't get that from you at all.
No, because I've learned to become the master of that fear. I've learned to do it. And what you don't see is me on the other side of the door before I walk into a meeting with yourself or other people going, Hacia, you have got this. You have thought out your idea. Here is the whole list of evidence that proves what you're about to say matters, is meaningful, has financial, has economic sense behind it. You've thought this out. So every time I work in there, I'm in the elevator doing like a massive pep talk to myself. No, you don't see that part.
Yeah. But that self-positivity talk must... How do you actually get into that discipline? Because don't you have sometimes in the back of your mind that little negative thing going, well, this is all just too hard? Or is that part of the discipline you've had to learn to literally get out of bed and learn how to walk again?
Well, that's often what I connect to. So, for example, when I'm going into meetings that I feel very fearful about, and I do have those anxieties or fears or anything like that, I put on my Boss Babe high heels. So I put on heels that I'm like, you know what, girl? You can walk, and you can walk in these bad boys. What you're about to go into, or the meeting or the situation that is scaring you, is nothing compared to learning how to walk in these bad boys again. So go in there, kick some corporate bum in your Boss Babe high heels. And that's literally how I do it. I know that sounds so stupid, but that's literally how I do it. That's
very cool. I want to circle back to two things before we look forward. One is, and I'll just ask the question directly. Do you still, what's your relationship with horses these days?
I absolutely adore and love horses. My partner's a farrier, so he gives horses pedicures. He hates it when I say that, but that's literally what he does.
We're not editing that out.
And so I still have horses very much in my life. So I'm very lucky to go and do that and see them. I haven't gotten back on a horse yet. And a lot of that is in the last 4 years, I've had 15 different operations and procedures. So I really haven't had that window of opportunity.
Would you get back on a horse, literally? Would you get back on one day?
I think one day, definitely. I think one day I would. The big factor of that is, again, looking out and not in. Like, my selfish side wants to go get on a horse tomorrow, but I think about what that would do to my poor father and putting him through that torment and stress again. I just couldn't do it to him. Like, I just couldn't put him through that just for my own selfish need to get back on a horse.
Did the accident bring you and your dad closer together in some ways?
Yeah, I think in some ways, because our relationship before that was probably a lot more around business and corporate and all those kind of things. Like, when I was a little girl, he used to not read Peter Bunny Rabbit to me. He used to read the Financial Review and board minutes to me, That was my bedtime story. So I think...
Thanks, Dad.
No, I loved it. It's great.
Well, Peter Rabbit's all about economics.
Yes, lots about economics and business and everything. So those moments of him coming in and bringing my dog and just being there with me as well, I think, again, like my dad being very sporty as well. Like if we weren't kind of doing business stuff, we were out doing Hacia Daddy triathlons and, running around the tennis court and riding our bikes and swimming or going sailing, or there was always an activity. So we never really had those still moments of just sitting there and being with each other. And obviously when I'm trapped in a wheelchair and can't do anything, all you can do is sit there and be still. So it was really lovely just to have those still moments with him.
Your father seems a very driven person. You're a very driven person in a positive way. I'm sure your dad is too. Do you get some of those traits from your dad, and do you look at your parents and go, well, that came out okay, and that's definitely a dad or that's definitely a mum bit?
Yes, I'm definitely a mixture of both my parents. My mum, again, is a fantastic woman, and she's established her own not-for-profit from a ground up, and she's very creative. So she's a writer and has that more creative side. Yeah. And my dad's very logical. He's very business-wise. He's very, structured and everything like that. So again, he's quirky and fun as well. So they come together, and I think I've got my very logical, structured side from my dad and a lot more of my emotional and creative and philanthropic side from my mum.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Have you ever thought about what would have happened had the accident not occurred? What life would have been like?
Yes, I think life would have been very, very different. I think I would have been focusing on that dressage goal, and just with career-wise, I would have wasted a huge opportunity. I would have just gone into being a cog in the wheel, gone into those accounting roles, which are very important as well, but I would never have put my passion and my heart and my drive into my career that I have now. And I think that would have lost an opportunity to create some of the meaningful change that I want to create out there within leadership styles, bringing more courage and vulnerability into the way that we lead, but also doing what I want to do about increasing the female representation within skilled trades. And I think both of them are so important. And if I didn't have the accident, my passion would have just been get that Australian jacket, and it would have been an internal thing, not that external focus.
3 quick questions before we ask the framing questions for the end. What's good leadership?
So I describe this. Leadership has 2 parts. So when you're leading your team and it's internal leadership, you're actually the bottom rung of the ladder. Your role there is to mentor, to lead, to push, to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that are better than your task, and make sure that that team plays as a team. And you're definitely that bottom rung of the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Then when you flip and you look external, then you're the mama bear. That's where you have your spine and your fight and your drive, and that's where you'll stand up and push back and protect your team and have that real kind of strength. But in your team, you have to be soft and vulnerable and gentle and guiding and supportive and create safety.
You've used the term vulnerable a bit today.
Yes.
How do you think that plays out in the corporate world?
I think a lot of people get confused between vulnerability and oversharing. So an example that I use in this space about the difference between vulnerability, which does not take away from your credibility whatsoever, versus oversharing, which can take away from your credibility, is an example. If you have a fight with your partner and it was traumatic, you're upset, you didn't get to sleep, coming into the office and saying, hey, would someone else please take lead on this meeting? I didn't sleep very well. I have a few issues back at home that has unsettled me, and I'm not going to perform my best in this meeting, but it's important we have this meeting. I know you can lead in this meeting. Can you take the lead and I'll take the support role? That's being vulnerable with your team and setting yourself up for success. Coming into the office, disheveled and going, my husband's an absolute prick. We got in this fight. He slammed the door. door, he smashed the coffee cup, he called me this, he said this, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, let's cancel the meeting, there's no way I can do this, you know, I've got to, you know, that's oversharing, and that is not being vulnerable.
And that undermines credibility, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that undermines credibility. But the first example doesn't undermine credibility at all. If anything, it creates a space for when your team's struggling to come in and say, hey, I've got some issues, or I had some bad news, or something like that. It creates a space for your team to do that. And then you're actually stopping molehills turning into mountains, because when people come in and they are struggling and they don't say anything about it, they do miss things and they drop the ball, and then you're like, why are you performing so badly? And it sets that conversation up completely different. When if you know your team's struggling, you're like, all right, what can we take off your plate? How can I support you? How can I help you? And then you don't have issues. You don't drop the ball because you're there as a team.
Last question before we wrap. What is courage? Me asking you, given what you've gone through.
Yeah.
What's courage?
For me, courage is dreaming those dreams, those big dreams that scare you, that other people can't see, or maybe other people can't understand. Like when I was in hospital, my dream was to walk again, and a lot of the medical team were just like, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. But I dreamed those dreams, and then it's about turning a strategic mind to how can you actually make those dreams a reality? How can you make sure that you're listening to your heart, your gut, internally, what you know you can do, and not listen to external limitations, and take those little steps. Overcoming fear and being courageous is not those big audacious things. It's taking meaningful little steps every single day to walk towards that dream that you've dreamed that has scared the hell out of you.
Awesome. 3 last questions.
Yes.
So thinking back on what we've talked about today and what you've gone through, firstly, what would 21-year-old you say to the you of today?
Linking back to that definition of courage that I have, 21-year-old me would say to current me is, don't let society or external limitations or what society thinks is wrong or right beat those courageous dreams out of your head. Dream them big, and go and do them.
And rock the pink,
yes,
as you were saying before.
And rock the pink. Do it while wearing pink.
Okay, second question. Or salmon. I might have to go and buy some salmon. We've all heard the saying, if I had my time over again, I would. So what's some of the key learnings would you share on that basis?
So in general, I pretty much wouldn't change anything on my path. 2 things I probably would do sooner, which I have started to do now, is 1, reconnect with my school writing a lot earlier. I kind of left out there like a bat out of hell and never wanted to look at it again. And now I'm actually the treasurer of the Old Writonian Association. So I would definitely reconnect with my high school a lot sooner. And when I was at Deakin Uni, I was there as a mature age student, and I kind of just saw it as a way to gain education, and I didn't really get involved in the student activities or really immerse myself in university life. And that's probably, if I had my time again, I would make sure I was a lot more, saw the uni more than just an academic resource, and do a lot of things. Because the one student activity I did do, I ended up meeting my best friend. So there you go.
Awesome. Where to from here for you for the future? You've got a huge career ahead of you, but where to from here? What's the grand plan? What's the big vision?
The big vision for me is twofold. It's definitely increase my keynote speaking and my courage coaching so I can inspire more courageous leadership out there off self and off teams. And then the second thing would really be, 3 things actually. The second thing would be focusing on my directorship career, because I think corporates play such a meaningful role in how society operates, and that I would like to be a director of companies to make sure that the corporations are actually putting into society and creating a better world for society to live in. And being a director is a great way to be able to have influence of that. And the third thing is definitely get more females in our skilled trades industries.
Fantastic. So last question, in a couple of sentences and to finish, and again, thank you so much for your time today. What would the Hacia of today say to 21-year-old Hacia?
Don't get lost in this world with following the path of being that chameleon, of listening to what society expects a woman to do or a male to do, what you think the box that you should fit in. Throw that out of the wall. Spend time and have the curiosity, vulnerability, and courage to understand who your authentic self is, and then go and be that person. And yes, you will not vibe with some people and they're not part of your tribe, and don't take that personally. Your weirdness will vibe with someone else's weirdness, and you'll have the most incredible professional and personal connections and relationships. So just find out who your authentic self is and stick to that.
Wonderful. Hacia, thank you so much for joining us on Dear 20-Year-Old Me today. It's fantastic. Much appreciated for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, what a great series of reflections there from Hacia. Incredible courage. When we talk about courage, the pain and the anguish and the immense challenges that she has gone through and overcome are just mind-boggling. And I am particularly grateful for her time and her honesty in opening up about some of those challenges that she's not only faced but gone through, and how she approaches her future, which I'm sure is an exceptionally bright one. So thank you so much, Hacia, for coming along and having a chat with me today. Thanks to Cursed Kids and the Pooch for their support behind the scenes, and for you, most of all, for taking the time to listen to this episode of Dear 21-Year-Old Me. It is very, very much appreciated. It's not a real podcast without listeners, and I am particularly grateful. So thanks for your time. Stay well, go well. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us today. For more episodes and links, visit dear21yearoldme.com. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts.